This is an iconic shot from Lord of the Rings: Return of the King, and we're going to be recreating it. The catch? They spent over 3 years shooting and editing The Lord of the Rings,
and we're going to be making it in just 5 days.
5. Alright, so let's put 24 hours up on the clock and start this baby. There we go. We are counting down. Day 1 started with a location scout at a cool location we thought might work for what we needed. Coronado Heights.
Here we go. I've never driven up here before.
This might have been a terrible idea.
Oh darn. Oh darn.
Keep going.
No, this is not good. This is so bad. We got traction, baby. Okay, that was some adrenaline right there.
We tossed around a couple of ideas for locations at the top, but settled on this one.
Guys, we made a discovery. Out in Kansas, there aren't a lot of things, but we do have Stonehenge. Pretty much
it
there.
It looks like legit Stonehenge from here.
After a couple of test shots with the drone, we headed out. As a quick side note, we do not have a name for this drone yet, so if you think you have a cool idea for a name, then leave it as a comment below, and maybe we'll even choose it.
It was a fun day. It was a fun location. Looking forward to shooting it tomorrow.
On the drive home, we were probably the most excited and inspired by filmmaking we'd been in months. Unfortunately, all that excitement wouldn't make up for day 2. Day 2 was the hardest day out of all of them. Here's why. To begin with, our car wasn't powerful enough to climb the muddy hill, so we attempted the half-mile trek by foot. We weren't going to ask Josh, who was going to be our second character, to come with us. After all, this was our shot, not his, so we decided to use Seth as our subject/supermodel. It took way longer than expected, and we were carrying a lot of equipment. At the top, the wind was blowing constantly at about 50 miles an hour.
I'm gonna put this up, we're gonna do a couple test shots, and hopefully this works out.
The moment I got the drone out, the propellers caught the wind and cut my finger off. Okay, no, it wasn't off. We had to scream to hear each other, and it was a fight just to stand upright. The drone could hardly get into the air, and any shots that we did get were incredibly jerky. Defeated and cold, we got out of the wind to look at the shot. At the time, we just wanted to give up and leave with what we had. It was here that we realized that I could just hold the drone and use the gimbal that was in it and do our movement with that. This worked much better, and after a few takes we were satisfied with, we made the long hike back down. We were both exhausted. There were way more challenges than we'd anticipated, but we made it through and we had our shot. First and most obvious thing to do in any VFX shot with a moving camera is to track the scene. So that's what we did, or tried to. It didn't work. For whatever reason, Blender didn't seem to understand the scene and the difference between close objects and far ones. I hacked it by tracking points on the sky since they roughly aligned with what objects in the distance would move like. Next, I converted the tracks to empties and added a quick key and test track in HitFilm. I used Blender's default landscape tool and went from there, importing a base texture, adding subdivision and displacements, and tweaking the mesh's proportions. The shape of the mountain was pretty boring in the original shot, so I took a little creative liberty to spice things up. I made the landscape next and used primarily a plane with displacements. I got the volcano and landscape to track properly by parenting them to the landscape empties so they moved at the same speed as the sky. I experimented with lava flow texture for the volcano, but it was taking way too much time and didn't look that great. This was probably a good decision because we were running out of time. To see everything we'd made in the scene, we made a pre-comp in DaVinci Resolve. By we, I mean Seth, with some suggestions from yours truly, the over-the-shoulder co-executive. We could have rendered out an entire animation of Mount Doom, but instead we decided to just render out a plane. Thank you, Ian Hubert. After that, we used the track data to render out a pass for the plane, and the same for the landscape. Next, we worked on the raw footage in HitFilm. I mean, me. I did it. It was me. I did a basic luminance key to key out the sky, using a mask to tell HitFilm where not to use the effect. The problem was that later on in the clip, the fields weren't different enough in luminance to get the same result. Another reason that we should have just gotten the shot on the first day, when the mist made the ground in the distance a lot wider and easier to key. So basically, I had to mask the edge of the cliff by hand. After Effects would have been really handy in this situation, but since we didn't have the budget for it or to hire anyone on Fiverr, we just used HitFilm instead, which you will see the consequences of. So at the end of the third day, this is the shot that we had, and there was a lot more work to get done. So we wanted to add some interest, and it was looking pretty bland. So we did the unthinkable. So I got a model of an old tower ruin off of Sketchfab. I spent about an hour messing with materials and adding it into the scene. Isaac and I decided not to use it for 2 reasons. 1, it distracted us from the volcano, and 2, it would eat up valuable time to make it look even acceptable. In the end, we agreed to come back to it if we had extra time. Spoiler alert, the tower would never see the light of day again. We were going to comp in the actual video footage of a volcano erupting, but since we couldn't find any acceptable footage, we just had to do it in Blender. He used an effector to create the cone-shaped scene in the original shot to match the contour of most volcanoes, including the one from the original shot. After a couple of renders, the shape and motion of the smoke looked good, or good enough. So we lit it and rendered it out into a tracked version. We got a little crafty with the volcano flames, using an upside down clip of a waterfall with a luma key and some glow effects. Why do more when you can do less? I finished the mist and created the orc camps in the valley with a particle system distributed by a weight paint group. At this point, we had a more complete comp, but hadn't completed the ore druid comp or any sky replacement elements. So those were next after some other mask adjustments. Surprise, surprise. I composited the mist back in and made more mask adjustments. I added hit film's built-in cloud system, which can also be used for mist with a low opacity, as we used here in foreground to subtly blend both pieces of the comp together. Then it was more mask adjustments. And so this is what we had at the end of day 4. Since we didn't have any audio with the original drone footage, we began by collecting Foley. Mostly footsteps and clothes rustling. Okay, and now get your legs to rub together.
Why? That looks really weird. What you do for the shot.
No comment. Our cats were there to lend a paw wherever we needed it. Back at the computer, I put together a basic sound design consisting of wind, thunder, footsteps, breathing, and apparently a lone meadowlark. Little cameo. We then adjusted the sky replacement more. It was here that we ran into a problem. The parallax was too harsh toward the end because we were just using the clouds as a track point for every bit of the comp, even though there were bits that were closer to the camera. We didn't figure this out until we cached the shot. Scrubbing through the timeline, it looked fine, but as soon as you played it through at real time, you could see some problems. It was too late to fix everything, but we did what we could. We basically chose a spot in the video to deviate from the cloud movement and slow down the parallax to make it less noticeable. This was the most time-consuming part of the shot. Also, more masking. We threw the shot into DaVinci for preliminary color grading and post-work, adding effects such as motion blur, blurring, sharpening, film grain, and glows. This was mostly to cover up that the tracking was not lining up with the other clips. With only a couple hours left, there wasn't time to fix it. Here I modeled a rough version of Barad-dûr, or as mortals refer to it, Sauron's Tower. Morons. Our internet was down at this point, so I just winged it and did what I could remember. My available reference was this. Then I played around with noise textures and emission shaders for the eye and rendered it out as a still frame to track into the shot. At this point, we also worked on an Easter egg, but we're not going to spoil it for you. So if you stick around, then maybe you can find it yourself. Pretty much the last thing for the composite was adding in a beam for the eye and animating it moving. Look, masking, and look, more masking. Then we applied the final color grade. Since we had taken the contrast and saturation out of everything, the clip blended together really well as soon as they were added back in. I wanted a touch more teal in the shadows, but Seth actually toned it down to look closer to the actual shot. So voila! Mediocrity. Frodo can cast the ring into the cracks of doom, and you can cast that cursor onto the like button. So this has been a pretty crazy journey. We've learned quite a few lessons, and here are a couple of them. You will want to plan. If you do not have an idea of what you're going to be doing, you'll be staying up at 2 a.m. trying to finish a shot. Don't ask about that. Next time, we'll definitely do a lot more planning.
And I would say even maybe budget yourself a little bit more time than you think you need.
Moving segue. Perfect.
Manage your time well. This is something that I think we really struggled with. Projects are never finished. They are abandoned. This one was abandoned a lot sooner than a lot of the ones that we've worked on, but I think it was pretty good for the amount of time that we had.
So the third point is you don't want to overestimate yourself and your abilities. You're not as good as you think you are. Plan that you're probably not going to get it done in the time you set forth, and you might even be worse than you thought, but you'll get better over time.
Do not use hit film for very large projects.
You can use hit film. It's fine.
Editing software does matter, but
work with what you got.
Yeah.
To finish up, you'll want to actually finish your product. Whether that's making a random effect or this shot, which took longer than it
or
should
even
have.
spending years on VFX for Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
As an example.
So if you finish your small projects, then you're going to finish your larger ones. It's going to make you want to do the next one even more, and you'll be more successful as a result.
All right, here is the shot. I just now realized that you can hear a meadowlark in the background, but we don't talk about that.
You put in a meadowlark sound?
No, I put in the sounds of you walking in our driveway, and they're happening.
Oh, and that, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
let me hear it again. So did you catch it? Did you catch the Easter egg? And if you see it, then you've got some really good eyes. Shout out to the guy who did the sound design. It sounds amazing.
Shout out to the guy who did the entire shot. That's my boy Chris over there. He's the best compositor we have.
Yeah. So in case you didn't catch it, there is J.R. Tolkien and Peter Jackson
In
sitting.
the order of importance, of course.
Yes, sitting and enjoying themselves.
Yeah, basically we just
In the rocky mountain
just
range
took-
of Mordor.
2 random images offline, comped them in, basically.
Yeah.
Adjusted for color and saturation.
Because they deserve to be there.
Mostly Tolkien, but also Jackson.
In conclusion, don't be afraid to challenge yourself.
Also, don't rule out your limitations, and most importantly,
Just have fun.
but
So-
also do good work, because if you just have fun, you'll get fired.
That's it.
So, Weta, I'm sorry we haven't gotten back to you about our project, but
Our schedule has been a little tight this June, but I think we might have an opening if you're looking to hire us sometime late July, so leave a comment and we can get in touch.